Hello, my name is Nikolai from Beyond the Carbon podcast. Welcome to our first episode with Clara from ReThinkWaste. Today we're going to talk about waste management and climate change education. I hope everyone enjoys. My first question is, what's your name? Introduce yourself, and what do you do, and how do you contribute to climate change?
So my name is Clara. I work as an environmental education fellow. So the waste agency ReThinkWaste here runs a fellowship for up to 3 years. It's like 1 to 3 years, and it gets renewed every year if you want to stay with it. And so it's a really good way for new graduates or maybe people that want to switch careers and work in sustainability and kind of like dip their toes in and see how things work or build certain skills, because it can be a hard thing to just jump into even if you have a degree for it, because there's a lot of different aspects. The way that my job contributes to climate change or works with climate change is that we go out and help educate the public about waste and how human cause affects our world, be that with landfills or litter. And my job especially is working with schools and helping our outreach fulfill certain curriculum and help kind of explain more natural science side of stuff.
So adding on to that, what are some schools you've been to in the past?
We prioritize, we really only work with schools in our service area, meaning the schools that are in the geographic location that we pick up waste from and then find markets for or landfill it. So that includes generally Burlingame down to East Palo Alto and everything that is east of 280, pretty much. So most of San Mateo County, but not Half Moon Bay, for example. So some schools that we've worked with, we're working a lot with East Palo Alto schools. So this week we're down at, it has a really long name. It's Los Robles, Ronald McNair. And before that we were at Bellhaven down there. In a little bit we'll be at Laurel Elementary in San Mateo. So we get to go around, see the community.
Yeah, that sounds really amazing. So obviously you educate the public about waste management, and I was just wondering, how have the sustainability practices of waste management evolved over the years? Because obviously from maybe 10 years ago things were a lot different than they were now.
Totally. It's a super dynamic field. So just not even 100 years ago, plastic was not at the scale that it is today. Plastic came out of World War II pretty much. So things change really, really, really fast. And now our most recent hurdle is companies labeling things as compostable plastic, and just the word compostable isn't regulated at all. And we're trying to divert the waste out of the landfill and encouraging composting. And so people with totally good intentions are buying things that say they're compostable, and then we find that they're not. So that's the kind of modern day equivalent. But just maybe 40, 50 years ago, moving away from incineration was a really big deal with environmental justice. But also there's technology today where other countries are able to safely incinerate their waste and make energy, but as the looks of it, that won't happen in California. So and it's all rooted in really important stuff, because it was not a good thing when people were burning trash here. Things really change with the times, and as technology changes and as waste streams change. So something new might come along, a new material, even clothing, the amount of clothing that we buy and have to get rid of is just so much larger than it was even 30 years ago. So
Yeah, definitely.
and then think about e-waste, and there's just all these different waste streams where it's All right, we have our work cut out for us here.
Wow, that was a really in-depth answer. So earlier you mentioned that a lot of companies label their packaging as compostable. Can you give us some examples of like some of these companies that people can actually watch out for in like the supermarkets on their day-to-day basis? Because e-waste and clothing, those are a little bit more like out of your way to go about, but I think we can start definitely shopping more sustainable, and I think getting some information about what companies to look out for will definitely help.
Okay, yeah. So I can't really name any like specific companies that can come to mind, honestly, but I will just say like if it looks like plastic, honestly kind of assume that it is. Maybe you've seen before those like wooden utensils, and like I know some people are not a fan of like how they look or feel, those tend to break down inside of a composter, but if you see something like you might see like a spoon that says like made out of potato starch or 100% compostable or bio whatever, like a lot of these companies will just put like bio something on there, and it is just like greenwashing, but people, totally good intention, they're like, oh, okay, perfect, this is, and usually those are the ones that are like 20% more expensive too, so just something to look out for.
While you're speaking, I actually thought of a really good example. So the plastic water bottles that come in cases? Yeah, those are usually advertised as 80% like recycled plastic. Would you say that's like those have an impact on like reducing greenhouse gas emissions, or would you say that's more of an advertising hoax? If I was
Yeah, when it comes to plastic recycling, things are really tricky. And even as my job is outreach, there's a lot of things where it's like how I have not seen with my own eyes where a plastic bottle ends up or what it gets made into. And if something says that it's made out of recycled whatever, I don't that's cool, but I don't know who is,
Oh, so it's a lot deeper than just what it says on like a packaging.
It really is, when it comes to like glass or metal, like those things, like metal especially, like gets recycled because it's a lot easier to first sort it, and to like it has value inherently because it's like harder to mine. When it comes to plastic, it's just so much cheaper for companies to go and make they call it virgin plastic, like it's just like brand new, not recycled, because plastic will lose quality every time it gets recycled, if it gets recycled in the first place.
Okay, so you mentioned that you go to schools, and I bet there's a lot of inspired kids, especially from elementary schools, as this is like climate change, they've never heard of it, and they realize it's hurting the world. So I was just wondering, like from your work, do you actually see the effects of your work, or do a lot of kids brush it off, or is it not really like, do you not see your presence?
That's a good question. Yeah. I mean, waste is one of those areas with climate change where you get to like actually pretty immediately like make an effect, because it just comes down to like how you're sorting. Like if you can like be smart about not putting something in the landfill, that's a huge step, honestly, and it's a minor thing. I mean, we throw stuff away every single day. You can't really not do that in modern day America. Like that's just how things are. We also, we're careful to not overwhelm kids. We work with like fourth graders. We want to like keep things kind of fun and not make them feel like burdened or that the world is going to end, like because it there's still a lot of work that can be done, and waste is like honestly one of the like areas that gives people a lot of agency. So that's at least my angle on it.
Okay, that sounds amazing, actually. So you work for ReThinkWaste, and I was just wondering, as part of the company, do you guys get real data of like the effects that you guys have on the community, or is it sort of you just hope people listen, or like can you please explain more on that?
Yeah, totally. So we work with schools, and we do like what's called a diversion rate. So say we go to Laurel Elementary. That's where we're gonna go next week. And maybe they're landfilling all of their waste from their school lunches, and at the end of a school day, they have 9 bags of trash. We count a diversion rate, and we'll say, hey, when we started, they had 9 bags of landfill, but after we started visiting, they had 2 bags of recycling, 4 bags of compost, like, and kind of like show that. We do tours of our facility and talk a lot about like landfills and how we've actually extended the life of the landfill that we're currently using by about 5 years just by getting people to compost. And so, we will have to find a new one eventually, and who knows where that will be. But it is cool at least that we're getting kind of like a longer lease on it so far.
Okay, wow, that actually sounds great. 5 years is a really long time. So,
given that we've been doing this program like 5 years, yeah.
Okay, I was just wondering, so you obviously go to schools, but the adult audience doesn't really get this climate change education that us kids really enjoy. So I was just wondering, like, what's an example of something that someone could do at home to, help climate change and reduce greenhouse gas emissions?
Yeah, there's so many things you could do, seriously. I mean, you can, like, little things like thrifting, or learn how to, like, mend clothing and kind of, like, find the joy in that. Make it, like, stylish instead of just, like, getting rid of jeans. Like, maybe learn how to do a cool patch or something. And, we don't want to, like, blame consumers. But that is, like, we're all consumers, and we have choices at the supermarket. Like, do I get my pasta sauce and this or that? If you can afford to, like, resist plastic, and especially soft plastic, which cannot be recycled, that's a huge step. Just like, also, even like within my family and extended friends, like, I know so many people that just like still landfill everything. And those are the like conversations that's just like, if you talk to your neighbor and like, hey, did you know like your eggshells, it's actually good to like put them into the compost, because then they don't end up releasing methane in a landfill. And just like kind of like be a voice of don't like nag people, but just be like, hey, I learned this. And
so those are some amazing strategies. I was just wondering if you could give us like a personal example that you personally implement even today. Like, is there something that you've done today that you think has helped the environment?
Ooh, today personally. I helped my family out today. I was like helping them kind of clean up their garden a bit. It was like very overgrown with weeds, and so and my mom has slacked off on her usual kind of like liking to grow tomatoes in summer and stuff. So I think that's cool, because I moved to the city and I don't have a garden, so now I'm like, let me help you. That was my day today, at least, besides just working my normal job. But
so you mentioned that you just moved, or you moved to the city. Do you see a large difference in like waste management strategies, or how people treat climate change from the city or to more of the suburban area?
Really interesting question. I did read a book. It's 10 years old now, but it was called Garbology, and I remember in that book they talk about how the residents of San Francisco buy more things on average, like compared to other large cities, which has always stuck with me. And I'm really curious where that stat is from. I need to look into it. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like, people in San Francisco, like, a lot of them work in tech, make good money, they want to buy nice things. There's also, there's a different waste management company there. There is Recology, who's a private company, meaning they're like for profit, versus us, who we're kind of like a non-profit. We're like local government, we're not making money. All the money that we do make just goes to the facility. And so how they run things are a little bit different. We like to be as transparent as we can, whereas they have like private stuff, they have to like kind of guard it a bit more. But yeah, just different strategies for different places, and some locations it benefit from having things one way versus another sometimes.
Oh, okay. That's great. You guys are a nonprofit. I think there's Recology actually really close to my house on our exit actually.
Yeah, one thing actually I will add, so we work with Recology. We like contract them as the hauler, so that's why we'll see them in the neighborhood. But then we are like they are just the hauler basically.
Okay.
Like they are just getting the trash and then bringing it to our facility, and we paid them to do that.
That's great. So personally in my house we don't have a compost bin. Do you recommend that everyone should get one, or like how important does having 3 bins versus 2? What's the difference there?
Yeah, so the reason that my job kind of exists actually was there was this law that was passed in California called Senate Bill 1383. And this is like the compost bill, because people in California realized, oh my God, our landfills are filling up and we have a really big state, but oh my God, where are we going to put all this stuff? So, and they realized, they did like an audit of what was going in there and realized a lot of it was food waste. Not only does food waste take up space inside the landfill, but if like a tomato cannot break down in a landfill because there's no oxygen, so it's like anoxic. That tomato will release methane gas. But if you put that tomato in a compost, it can actually just turn into carbon. And all of that methane gets like saved as carbon, and it can go back into dirt and stay kind of like in a cycle in that way. And then we sell the compost to farmers. That being said, like this takeoff, like, because the main part of my job actually is getting people to compost. You know, it's not a perfect system. We work with kids all the time and see like a kid will throw a whole can of yogurt into the compost because yogurt is food. But then like the container that it's in obviously isn't. So there's contamination that happens, and the facility is doing their best to screen that out, but it's definitely a big effort to try to get people to compost. So like kind of a long-winded answer saying like it's technically the law, but you're not gonna like get in trouble for not. It's just we're taking this rollout to get people to do it and to feel good about doing it.
Hey, I didn't realize that was actually such a like large movement for composting. Actually, might get my family to start composting.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you read the emails before, but this I'm supposed to tie this back to sea level rise. So I was just wondering, does waste management, like, are there any ways that intertwines with sea level rise, or like anything that seems to cause sea level rise, like more heat or anything like that?
Yeah, totally. So composting, because it won't release methane, helps. Like methane is like a really, really powerful greenhouse gas, right? So it's like, I forget, it depends how you measure it. It's like either 20 times as bad over its like lifetime, or like instantly. I think it's like 70 times as bad as CO2. So methane is just like really, really good at heating up the earth, unfortunately. And like 20% of the world's methane does come from landfills.
Yeah.
So if we can, move away from not doing that, it will help with sea level rise. The only other thing I can think of how waste relates to sea level rise is in the Bay Area, especially 90% of the original San Francisco Bay wetlands have now been like filled in, and for a lot of the our history, it was like informally filled in with trash, just meaning like
like people littered.
Yeah, people littered, but like in terms of like a dump site, and it would be like on the bay basically. And then they eventually like paved that over and kind of made things like nicer and safer. But definitely as sea level rises, like debris is filling out and like coming into the bay a bit, because landfills were not made to be to last. or with as engineering knowledge that we might have today to build a landfill. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So from all like the climate change knowledge I've actually gotten, I noticed that most of all the like activities that help stop climate change, they actually in turn help stop another effect of climate change. For
Okay.
example, sea level rise. I was just wondering, do you guys work with other climate change activists that work with other sorts of solutions, like people that try to stop the ice caps from melting or something like that? Like, what's your take on that?
Yeah, we because we work, in like the education sector a little bit, we also work with like people that might teach kids about like other types of natural science, whether it's like a biology tour or something. I have not seen before people that talk about like polar ice melting per se, but we do work with a lot of like natural science teachers in the area. Yeah.
That sounds great. I think that is about all I have to say for today.